We're breaking down the techniques used by 11 Madison Park, a 3 Michelin star restaurant, so that you can make Michelin quality purees at home. I spent hours researching their techniques and found that 90% of their purees fall into one of 4 categories. I will cover everything you need to know to make these purees at home, and as a bonus, I'll show you my favorite plating techniques for purees. The recipes are linked in the description.
For each category, I analyzed the techniques used based on the cooking methods, fats used, and pureeing techniques. The first category is starch-based purees. Our main focus with this category is preventing the starch from becoming gummy. Starch-based purees fall into 2 subcategories: high sugar starches like sweet potato and yams, and low sugar starches like potatoes. For high sugar starches, start by peeling sweet potatoes and cutting them to 1-inch dice. You will need 200 grams. Heat a pan with 210 grams of butter. That's a lot of butter. Sweat the sweet potatoes until they are tender, about 10 to 15 minutes. This is to increase the flavor of the sweet potatoes without browning them. Season with 8 grams of salt. Cover with 475 milliliters of half and half and cook at a light simmer for 10 minutes. We don't want to reduce this too much. Since we used butter to sweat the potatoes, half and half is used instead of cream so that the puree isn't too rich. Using half and half will likely cause curdling, but since we're blending it, this is not an issue. To finish the puree, blend it until completely smooth, then pass it through a fine mesh sieve and chill over ice. This will help prevent a skin from forming. For the low sugar starches, EMP exclusively uses Lorrat fingerling potatoes, which I could not find, so I used generic fingerlings. Fingerling potatoes are used over larger potatoes like Yukon Golds because they have a stronger flavor. Peel 680 grams of fingerling potatoes and place them into a pot covered with cold water. Bring to a simmer over medium heat and cook until they are tender, about 25 to 30 minutes. Drain the potatoes, then pass them through a potato ricer or food mill into a large bowl. Add 62 grams of butter to a small pot and brown. Purees can be tweaked by changing the butter, whether it's brown butter like this one, smoked butter, truffle butter, or just whole butter. Add 250 milliliters of cream to the brown butter and heat up just before a simmer. Fold the cream mixture into the potatoes just until combined. The potatoes should look a little loose. Cream is used instead of half and half because of the extra fat, which will coat the potato starches, helping prevent them from becoming gummy. Pass the potatoes while they're still warm. If the potatoes are passed while they're cold, they will become gummy. Season with 5 grams of salt and store in a warm place. Our second category is white purees, with the main focus on keeping them as white as possible. Start by cutting 350 grams of cauliflower into 1/4-inch dice. All white purees use smaller pieces to ensure quicker cooking times, helping keeping the purees whiter. Place the cauliflower into a large pan. Cover with 240 milliliters of half and half and bring to a boil. Then reduce to a low simmer and cook until tender, about 25 minutes. Half and half is used in cooking these purees because it can be reduced without becoming excessively rich. Other fats that can be used are cream and oil. Acids like lemon and citric acid are sometimes used to prevent oxidization. Once the cauliflower is tender, separate the cauliflower from the cooking liquid. Add the cauliflower to the blender, and while blending, add in the cooking liquid a little at a time until the puree is smooth but not loose. You should use around 60 milliliters of cooking liquid. Brown 35 grams of butter, then pour into a bowl to stop the cooking process. Add the butter and 5 grams of salt to the puree while blending. Pass the puree into a bowl, then place it over ice while stirring to quickly cool. This will prevent a film from forming.
Are you a home cook who wants to work with me to improve your culinary skills? Sign up for my culinary coaching waitlist, and I'll notify you when a spot becomes available. Link is in the description.
Our third category is citrus purees, and this is my favorite of the 4. The main focus with citrus purees is balancing the bitterness. There are 3 subcategories for citrus purees: whole fruit, peel, and pith. For whole fruits, remove the top and bottom of some Cara oranges, then cut them into 3/4-inch dice. In total, you will need 725 grams of cut oranges. Make a sachet with 1 gram each of coriander and fennel seeds, then tie with butcher's twine. Place the oranges, the sachet, 130 grams of sugar and 60 milliliters of water into a pan and bring to a simmer over low heat. Cook until the liquid has reduced and the oranges are tender, about 30 to 40 minutes. The more tender the orange peels, the easier it is to blend. Remove the sachet and blend the oranges until smooth. When pureeing foods that are hard to blend, like citrus in the next category, green purees, I find it best to start at a low speed because the blender has an easier time catching the food and will not incorporate as much air. If you are still having trouble, I like to help the blender by creating a vortex by moving the food with a rubber spatula. Just be sure not to catch the utensil on the blade. I've done that before. It's not fun. Add 15 grams of curry oil once the puree is smooth with 2 grams of salt. I made the curry oil in the French Laundry's herb oil video. I will link it at the end of this video and in the description. To finish, pass the puree into a small bowl, then place over an ice bath while stirring to prevent a film. For the peels, use a peeler to remove the zest of 12 lemons. We want as little pith as possible. Using a zigzag motion with the peeler will help prevent catching the pith. For the pith, make sure that there is no zest on it. Then, cut away the pith from 8 lemons. It is okay if there's a little bit of lemon flesh on the pith. For the flesh, place the citrus into a ricer and squeeze out all the juice and strain. Place the pith into a pot and cover with cold water. Bring this to a simmer and drain right away, repeating this process 2 more times. This will help remove some of the bitterness. Use the same process with the peels, then place the zest into a pot with 80 grams of sugar and 145 milliliters of water, cooking until tender, about 45 minutes. To finish using the pith method, place the blanched drained piths into the blender with 15 milliliters of cream, 75 milliliters of juice, 118 milliliters of water, and 20 grams of sugar, blending until the puree is smooth. Once smooth, add in 15 grams of cold cubed butter with 7 grams of salt. Pass the puree, then chill over ice while stirring. This puree has a slight bitter flavor, but is balanced. The peel method follows a similar process, except it uses some of the cooking liquid and no cream. The fourth category is green purees, with our main focus on keeping the bright green color. Bring a large pot of salted water to a boil. Add the spinach in batches, which helps prevent a drop in the temperature of the water. Then shock in an ice bath. In total, the spinach puree requires 900 grams of spinach. Fibrous ingredients like peas require a longer cooking time, but always cook until tender, then shock in an ice bath. For ingredients that will absorb water like zucchini, heat up a large pan on medium-high heat with some olive oil and quickly saute the vegetables without browning, using a lid if needed. Once tender, add to a bowl over an ice bath to chill. Note that green purees use no fat at all, except with olive oil when sauteing vegetables. Fats, especially dairies, will dull the fresh flavor and bright green color of the purees. All the techniques for green purees use an ice bath to stop the cooking process, which helps keep the bright green color. Once the spinach is cooled, drain it. Place into a blender with a couple cubes of ice, which will help prevent overheating the puree while blending, and add 5 grams of salt, then pass. With green purees, I like to blend in 2 batches, making the blending process shorter and helping prevent unnecessary friction. As a bonus, here are my favorite ways to plate purees. To make a soft quenelle, get the puree on one side of the spoon, then place it onto the plate. As you lift the spoon away from the puree, a lip should fold over towards the spoon. For a swoosh, make a soft quenelle, then use the back of the spoon to push the puree away. An arch is the same technique except that it arches. For circles, place a ring mold with some of the puree in the middle. Use the back of a spoon with a tip to spread the puree around, then remove the ring. The spread is similar to the swoosh, but you use an offset spatula to spread the puree instead of a spoon. For dots, use a piping bag and not a squeeze bottle. Squeeze bottles are best for liquids. As you squeeze the puree, lift the bag away to give the dot height. They should be nice and round.
If you enjoyed this video, you should watch this breakdown of the French Laundry's herb oil techniques next.